Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Tharp. Welcome to my studio, and we are going to start today. We are going to finish. This is episode 4 of How to Make a Quilt, the Rag Quilt series. And on this episode, I'll be using the Baby Lock Altair to finish my blocks, and then we're going to set them all together and then finish the edges at the end. Don't know how long that'll take today, but I will be on here until this rag quilt is finished and all that fun stuff. So a brief look. This is what the blocks look like. And you layer one piece of fabric, batting, and then the back piece of fabric, which is what I'm going to do right now. Let me swap to the other camera and I'm going to get started. Okay, so what I'm doing right here, these are ready to sew. As you can see, you put the first piece of fabric face down, center your square of batting on top of it, and then you put the next piece of fabric that matches the back, if that's what you want, face up. So I'm going to keep stacking these and then we'll start sewing. I appreciate any comments. Hi, Linda. Oh, I'm happy you can join me today. I saw your pictures earlier, Linda. They're beautiful photos you took. And like I said, I have a stack, and I cut these, everybody. Notice, see the fringe is already cut on it. So I used Quilt and the rag dye, the Quilt rag dye to cut all my pieces. I have all my pieces cut. Then I just have to sew them together, quilt the blocks, and then set all the blocks together, and it'll be done. But I do have kind of a unique way to finish around the edges of the quilt after it's all sewn together, and I'm going to show that will be on here at the very end once we get this all set together. Since I'm doing a checkerboard fashion, I'm just using 2 fabrics, and it's just going to be a checkerboard design is the best way I can call it. No 2 like fabrics will be touching. So as you can see, I've just grabbed a piece out of my stack and I'm putting it face down. Okay. Grab a piece of batting. I pre-cut these at 6.5 inches square. Most of my battings, I cut a lot of this from my batting scraps from when I quilt a quilt on the long arm. That way it doesn't go to waste. And then I'm going to put the next piece face up, right side up, and that would be one block. The next step, I'm going to quilt all these blocks by stitching corner to corner. Okay, let's see how many we got here. I've probably got way too many and not enough of one, but what it turns out to be is what it's going to be. This is going to be a little sample that I traveled with. Okay. And I started this stack with the darker blue, so I know if I end with the light blue on top, I'll have an even number of each one. Okay. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Right side down, batting, and then the same fabric right side up. Now truly, there's many different ways you could set these together other than the basic checkerboard fashion that I'm using. You could set it up as trip around the world. You could do multiple 9 patches out of these blocks and then set them together. Any quilt design based on a basic square, you could adapt for a rag quilt. Very versatile. Okay. Keep on keeping on. Hi, Linda. Oh, we have two Lindas in the room. Okay, let go, you. Come on. Okay, gotta get it separated. There we go. And when I get these under the needle, I'm going to line up all my layers at the corner before I start stitching. And I'm going to use a technique that I learned when I worked at a sewing factory back in the 80s. I am going to chain all of my pieces together because that is a way to speed up the whole process. If you're doing one of a repetitive task, that will totally speed that process up. You look very nice.
Did you ever find my jeans?
No, I never did find those. They must be in a tote somewhere. We'll have to look for them. Yes, I know where his jeans are. I cut them up last Sunday to start my bucket hat. It was time for them to get cut up, trust me. Mike's going off on an adventure today. He's going to go do some merchandising at Kroger's as an independent contractor. So I'm here alone now, and I will be watching the shop as I do this. If I turn on the intermission sign, everybody, that just means I have to go to into the little store that we have here in the first floor and wait on a customer. But it's super hot today and steamy. I don't look for many people to be out today. This is a slow time of the year for this type of stuff anyway, it seems like. And almost all of our business is machine repair. We don't sell much fabric or anything. Okay. I can see these stacks thinning down. I'm almost there. And you might think, oh, why don't you just do them one at a time? Well, trust me, it takes twice as long to do that, to create something, if you don't use what I call a speed piecing technique. It just makes you that much more productive in your sewing, or really anything that you do, whether you're sewing or knitting or dyeing wool or fabric. Why dye one piece when you can dye 20 pieces? You see what I mean? Just a little technique. I think I've only got like 3 or 4 more to set together, and we'll be ready to sew. Oops, wrong one. Actually, I've only after this one. I've only got 1 more to do after this one. No, 2 more to do after this one. I think we'll see. Yep, 2 more to do. I think that's one. Enough for 1 right there. Yes. Oops, wrong way. Wrong way. Face down. Right side down. I had that right side up. Right side down, batting square, excuse me, right side up. There we go. Then after I finish this today, I will launder it, and I will show it on this Friday's Feature Friday here. Okay, right side down, batting square, right side up, one more, and that's all I will have cut and ready to go. One, right side down, right side up, not right side up, batting, right side down, batting square, and then right side up. Okay. And you know what? Since it's cut, I have enough for one more dark blue. I'll just go ahead and do that one too. There we go. And then everything I have cut is now sandwiched and ready to go. Okay. So see, I have tons of these. I keep a lot of these made up. And the next rag quilt I do, I'm going to show you the technique to do it with flannel. Okay? Flannel, you don't have to use the batting. You're just using layers of fabric. Okay. Let me get me a drink of my tea. Yes, I'm not drinking coffee today. I'm drinking tea. Okay. Alrighty, so we are good to go. I'm going to select a serpentine stitch. Now, if you're making one of these, if you've never made one before, this is the time that you can play with all those beautiful decorative stitches on your sewing machine. As you can see on some of my previous ones I did, each one has a different stitch that I highlighted on each block. And I'm using variegated thread. It just adds some color and movement to a piece. This one, that one was done on the Solaris. This one was done on the Triumph. And, no, it was done on the Euphoria, I'm sorry. A Triumph could do it as well. It's just a double cover stitch. See how pretty those are. Okay. And then the other machine I used to do a sample test was this one right here. This is the Sashiko that does the hand look stitch. There we go. Okay. So, but for the remainder of them, I'm going to use Q18. So I'm in the quilting menu on my stitch selectors. All machines, regardless of the brand, have serpentine stitches. It looks like a squiggly line, like an S. The letter S is what it kind of reminds you of. And it's one of my favorite stitches on any machine. I use it a lot. And I'm going to finish this quilt, these blocks up doing this technique. So I'm going to grab one. And all I'm going to do is stitch from corner to corner, making the letter X on each one of these blocks that I had stacked. So I need to change this. I have the 1/4 inch foot on. Let me grab another foot to snap on. And there they are. They're over here by the other machine. Okay. And I'm just going to use the foot plate that comes with the digital dual feed foot, and that's this one. This is the general purpose foot plate for the digital dual feed. This is the one I'm going to use. Get on there, you. Here we go. Okay. And like I said, I'm just going to stitch from corner to corner. And here we go. We're going to get off to the race. And I'm using the same thread throughout right now, so that'll make it easy. What I do want to do though, I'm going to turn on my needle beam light. That's the way it's going right down where it's at. That's the center of the stitch. You can see on my finger there that laser light. Let me see if I can get a little closer. There we go. Get a little closer. So that's what I just turned on. Not all machines have that. And okay, let's see how this goes. Maybe I won't have to break each time. I just realized because of the rag nature of this quilt, we'll see how that does. There we go. And we're fine. You see what I did? I just lined it up with the needle, this little V right here. That way, that is my 2 points of reference when I'm doing this. Excuse me. I'm just going to go down and do each one. As I come down here, I want to align that light, that laser light, the needle beam light, up with the very exact corner of where these layers are located. The needle won't hit right in that corner though, because I'm using a serpentine stitch. If I was using a straight stitch, I'm going to change to that, just so you can see. Now, traditionally, people use just a plain straight stitch. Let me back up a little bit now so you can see better. There we go. Use just a straight stitch from corner to corner. Personally, I like to use some type of a decorative stitch. That way, it just spices it up and makes it fun. So now I'm just doing a straight stitch from corner to corner. I'm going to lengthen that up. I had that really short. There we go. Have it set on 2 millimeter, the default. And there we go. And we'll do 2 that way. Now this time with a straight stitch, that needle will exactly hit the inside corner of those corners. All I'm doing right now, I'm just lining up the needle light for that corner. It just went perfectly in the corner. And there we go. Easy peasy. So next, and I'm going to go back to my serpentine stitch. Just wanted to show you the difference between those two. But you can literally use any of the decorative stitches on whichever machine that you have. Excuse me. And you see, by stacking those ahead of time, you can just breeze right through this. Just breeze right through it. Puppy. Hey, Puffy Bubs. My little doggy is down here watching me sew. He stays right with me. He's my little shadow. Those of you that have watched me for a while, you see me. Come here, Bose. Come here. We'll put you on camera real quick. Come here. Come here, you turd. There we go. This is my little puffy dog. Let me swap my camera real quick. There you go. Say, hi, everybody. Puffin, look at the camera. Look. Look at the camera. Look up there. Look up there. Yes. Okay. There you go. Yes, we had a puffin incident 3 nights ago. He got a bee sting in one of his little paws, and it scared him, but it was really hurting him. So I always keep children's Benadryl, the liquid type, on hand just for him, just in case. And we already talked to the vet about that, and he okayed it and told us what the max dose for his size dog was, which was, I think, 5 milligrams or 5 milliliters, whatever. It's on the syringe. Just go to the number 5 as a maximum dose. So we gave him 2 to start with to see how that would go. And he just couldn't put any weight on his little foot. He was so upset. And he wouldn't get out of I had to hold him like a little baby because he was crying. Then we went ahead and after 30 minutes we gave him another 3 milligrams, and that did the trick. We also put tried to get ice on it. I'll tell you what, he did not like the ice bag being on his little swollen paw. But the next day, we went to bed. The next day, he was much better. Still limped a little bit, but by the afternoon, he was completely over it and back to his normal little self. Thank goodness. But boy, howdy, it sure does scare you when your little fur baby is in pain. I don't like to see my baby in pain. I don't like to see anyone in pain as far as that goes. Alrighty, just move them. Look at this. Oops, let me go back to my other camera. I thought there I was just blabbering. But look, I've got that way down. That's how many I got left to do. Yeehaw. This is going to be a smaller one. It'll be a small throw. But once I get it all sewn together, tomorrow I'm going to put it through the washing machine and then the dryer, because all that cut fringe, it will fray and unravel, and it'll make it really pretty. Really pretty. So yes, when making a rag quilt, there's totally no reason to ever pre-wash that fabric, because after you complete it, you've got to wash it anyway. Totally. And yes, once I get this stack done, I will have to cut them all apart. But it's just I just find it, by doing it in concentrated steps like that, it just seems like you get done quicker, because you've broken everything into a set of steps that you can complete one step at a time. And that's just me. That's just me. Hi, Foxy. Thank you, Linda. Yes, it was like Mike said, we're going to listen to his breathing. And if it affects his breathing, we'll just find an emergency vet to go to. But he never did wheeze, so that was a good thing. He didn't have an allergic reaction to it. He got stung underneath one of the crabapple trees out in the yard. Is where it happened. Luckily, it wasn't one of those really big wasps or bumblebees. It was some type of little fruit bee. I don't know, they're about, I would say half inch or so long, 3/4 of an inch. But Mike got stung by that tree last year when he was mowing, and he said those little things pack a powerful punch. And it's not like they're a honeybee or anything like that. Alrighty. Keeping on, keeping on. Come on, get my layers up. Put those up there. There's all we got left. That stack is like 1/10 of what it was when we started. Line that up a little bit better. Then as you'll see, when we set these together, we're going to use a 1-inch seam allowance all the way around. And I do recommend making a rag quilt using, if you don't have if your machine doesn't accept a digital dual feed foot, then use a walking foot. That's what you want, because you've got three layers here. And when we come back and do the other corner to corner, we don't want it to really pucker and put a pleat or anything in it. So a walking foot really helps prevent that. Okay. I think I've got about 6 more of these to do, and then we can start sewing them together. Yeehaw. It's a good thing. It's because this is so bulky and everything, it's wanting to catch right under the front part of this digital dual feed, so that's what you see me doing, just to keep that from happening. They came out with a newer version of it called the compact digital dual feed foot, and that would solve problems like that. If I was actually piecing so it wasn't like a corner going through first, and you'll see here when we start this next step, it's not going to do that, not nearly as bad. Let's see here. 2 more to go. It actually was quicker to sew them, to do this step, than the previous step of pre-stacking everything. If I would have had to stack each one of these as I was sewing, it would have took quite a while longer to do. Now I'm just going to cut it. And sometimes you can twist it so you don't have to cut them apart or when you're doing chain piecing, but this one I'm going to have to cut it apart. Okay. And honestly, there's truly no front and back to it at this step, because on each side it's the same fabric facing out. Puffin went to his little dog couch to take his nap. He's also my doorbell. He lets me know if anybody comes into the shop. So if he starts yapping really fast, we'll know there's just somebody out there. Affectionately known in the business as a shop dog. should have been counting that time so I could formulate a sequence in my head. So I'm not even, I really honestly, I don't know how many of these I've made for this. So I'll have to do some quick math once we're to that point. Okay, so now all I'm going to do, there's the first one I did. I'm just going to, it's sewed corner to corner here. Let's see if you can see that or not. Thread, here you go. You can see it, it's really light. There's the other side, it looks exactly the same. Excuse me. So now I'm just going to rotate it, and I'm going to do the other corner to corner on each one. When I finish this step, all the quilting is done for this quilt. So you don't have to put it in a long arm or anything. Everything you do at this step to put all 3 layers together, that is what your quilting is on this type of a quilt. Okay. And it's that way. You can see on that fabric, you can see it a little bit better. There you go, you can see what that serpentine stitch, that's my quilting stitch. I could heavily quilt it if I wanted to. One I done several years ago, I put a lot of stitching on it. Next one of these I will put a different type of a walking foot on for my next rag quilt. I'm getting the fabric together to do a flannel rag quilt, and we'll use a different machine and maybe just the dynamic walking foot instead of the digital one. This is my favorite one. But as you can see, this is a great quilt to make. You know, if you've never made a quilt before, this would be a great one to make, simply because you could actually kind of watch TV while you're doing this. Once you get your mark down, you can glance up at the TV or anything as you're sewing all of these pieces together. Ooh-wee. A new medication finally kicked in. Or my body's getting more used to it. This is week 2. I took my second injection on Monday. And boy howdy, it put me down there for almost a week. New medication they put me on. supposed to get up to 90 degrees here today, and of course here where I live this time of the year, there's always that wonderful thing called humidity to go with it. But I will tell you this, after living out in Denver, where it's fairly arid, quite honestly, but out living in Denver and out on the ranch, as dry as it was, you had to moisturize at least once a day because it would really dry your skin out. That's not as necessary here in Illinois. And of course, if I was cutting each one of these apart as I went, they would never bunch up back here, just so y'all know that. Get that corner lined up right here where my fingers are. And aim that laser light for it. Here's how many more we still have left. Like I said, once I finish this step, all the quilting for this quilt will be complete. And that's really pretty cool. Lining up that corner. Well, and that's what my parents used to call them, especially on the farm where there was an orchard. You'd really see those things there. And it might be what you're calling a ground bee, because yeah, they stay pretty much on the ground, especially by fallen fruit and stuff. I've always heard them called fruit bees for that reason. I'm sure that's not the right name of it as far as that goes. All I know is they really hurt when they sting you. Getting on. Now I'm going to try to count these. Notice I said try. On this next step, and I'm going to do some quick math. I've already got 4 times 3, 12 sewn together in the 2 patches. I just want to see how many rows I can get to make it look right before I start sewing all these together. In case I have an oddball row that's not evenly divisible by 2, I'll just have to be careful with that last row that I get the pieces in the right order. Okay. This after this one, there's 3 more. And boy howdy, I just went right over the same stitches I did before, but that's okay. We'll just go ahead and stitch that down. That one will just have a little extra, and I'm going to cut this one. Okay, and then I'm just going to now I'm on the corner that has no stitching on it. Okay. There we go. Oh, that actually looked really cool. it kind of made a double helix, you know, like kind of like what a strand of DNA looks like. Pretty cool. I'll show you that. See if y'all can see that on camera. This is the one I just, oh, you can see it. When I did 2 across each other, look what happened. Right there. That's where I made my boo-boo, and I went over the same stitch twice while I was talking without realizing it, but that looks pretty cool. At least I think it does. Okay. And we've got 3 more to go. I've really got to start paying attention because I just did it again. Didn't intend to, but I just did that again. So like I said, you can put as much quilting into one of these as you want to, as much stitching. And I sure put some extra stitching in it then. It was unplanned stitching, but it's all good. Okay. Yeah, then this one has not been sewn. A rag quilt is very forgiving. If you do a little faux pas like you just saw me do, it's a very forgiving project to make. Okay, here we go. And guess what? All of my quilting is now done. All of it. So I'm just going to cut these apart. And I'm going to count them in groups of 2. So one of each color in a group. There's 1. There you are. Okay. 2. That's 4. I will mess that up. So that's 4. Okay. This will be 5 and 6. 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13, and 14. Come here, you. 14, 15, and 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, 21, 22, and I knew I'd have one of the dark blues as an oddball, 23. Okay. So let me think here for a minute. I have 12 over there, and I have 23 here. That's 45. 5 times 9, 5 wouldn't be wide enough. 6 times 7 would be 42, and I have 45. So if I did that, that's what I'm going to do. It'll be 6 wide and 7 long. Or I could do 5 by 8. And that just wouldn't be quite wide enough for what I want it for. So I'm going to set these together so we end up with 42 blocks, 6 blocks wide, 7 blocks long. Okay. So 6 blocks wide, that would cover what I've got right here. So, right? Yes, that'd be 2 rows right there. We're going to make 7 rows total. So I'm going to make them in groups like that for right now. Okay. I'm going to do 3 stacks like that. So now all I'm going to do, everybody, we're just going to sew them together. And I'm going to each time I'm going to lay the light on top of the dark. I don't think it really matters, but just so I have some type of continuity in it, I'm going to use my piecing stitch, my middle stitch, and I'm going to set that to 2. And I'm going to move my laser light over my needle beam light here. Let me get that closer. I'm going to move that over that way to 1 inch. And you can see it right there. Now it's not going to go all the way to 1 inch. It does on the Solaris, but not on the Altair. Okay. So that being said, I'm just going to move it back to its center position, which is 3.5 millimeters on this machine. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to line it up right over here. There's a 1 inch mark on this bobbin cover. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to line it up right there. Just a minute here. And I don't have a seam guide for it handy, or I put a seam guide on it. And I'm not sure where my quilting guide bars are for that, so I can't do that either. So I'm just going to use the mark right here. It says 1 on it, on this bobbin cover. What I'm talking about is this right here. That focus in. Now you can see that number 1 all the way over here. And then it's also marked for 1/4 inch. And that other mark right there would be 5/8. Okay. So I'm going to use my guide, I'm going to use the marking on this to line it up at 1 inch, and then I'm just going to stitch it down all the way to here. And I'm not going to chain piece this one, because now I'm going to have a lot going on. But you do not need to backpack or anything like that, simply because all the stitches will get caught. They'll all be secured when you set the next rows together. Okay. Here's 2. I'm just going to sew everything together in groups of 2. Lining that fringe up right with the edge, that marking on my plate. Making sure both of my corners are lined up. That looks good right there. And what I'm doing the whole time that I'm sewing, I am not watching my needle. I'm watching that mark to make sure my fabric is hitting that mark. But as you can see with the rag quilt, the fringe part, see how this will be, that will be the fringe, that's the fringe. That is now considered the front of a rag quilt, where the fringe is. The back will be entirely smooth. There's that seam. That'll be entirely smooth on the back of the quilt. Okay. And we'll go ahead and set 2 together. In case you can't stay on long, you can see this process, this step right here. Okay. All we're going to do is put the back sides together. Let me back this camera up. Not that much. Don't you see my pile of stuff over there? There we go. And I'm just going to line this. All I have to do is line these center seams up. And I'm going to nest that seam. I'm going to turn one to the front, one to the back. I'm just going to put a pin in it. And then I'm good to go. Here's my mark. Now these pins I'm using, you can sew over. It's not good. On a machine like this, it won't hurt a thing. And that's those magic pins. Love those. I converted, except for my long arm. I do not use them in the long arm. They're just not strong enough because it's a smaller gauge wire. But let's pull that out. Excuse me. And there we go. Now we now have 4 sewn together. As you can see on the back, check it out. No fringe on the back. And we're going to repeat that process for all of these. Okay. I have 23 blocks to sew together on this step. And I'm just going to go ahead and make 4 patches as I go, except for the last 6 blocks. Because I'll have to make a single row out of those. You'll see. Line them up. I'm not watching the needle, I'm watching the mark over here. So my fabric is lined up at that 1-inch mark. And we're going to put the backs together. Nest that seam. I'm going to put a pin right there to hold them all together. And see these magic pins, they're a very fine gauge. There you can kind of see it there. Let's see here. Against the white of that, you can see it right here. There's that pin. It's about 0.5 millimeter. 0.5 to 0.6 millimeters, and they're super fine, just like a silk pin is. And because it's so small, you can just sew over them and not damage anything. I do it all the time, except on a serger. That'll damage your knife blade on a serger. You don't want to sew over pins on a serger. Make sure I'm clear about that one. Here we go. A lot of bulk right there where those 4 blocks meet. That's why I slowed up. Excuse me. And there's 4 more sewn together. Okay. Now we're rocking. Now we're rocking. Get everything lined up. Slide it under that foot, hit my 1-inch mark, and stitch it down. Now you might be wondering, well, how do you finish the edges if it's all raggedy edges? I'm going to show you how I do it. And just so you know, do not put binding on it. Could you? If you wanted to trim all the edges of all the fringe off of it, you could put traditional binding down, but you're defeating the purpose of a rag quilt when you do that, because the edges look marvelous after it's been laundered. Okay, let's match up that seam. Right there. Gonna pin it. Ow. Right there. Line up the corner. Line it up with my mark. And stitch it down. Thread, pull out the pin, and here we go. Another one. Okay, so there I've got 2 stacks of 12 blocks each, so that would make 4 rows. So I gotta do 3 more 2 patches like I've just been doing. I gotta do 3 more of those. Oh, and I do have the same thread in my bobbin as I'm using on top. Need 2 units like that, 4 blocks total for each unit. Another way I could look at this, if we want to get super technical, I'm going to make, let's see here, 9 units of 4 blocks sewn together, 9, and then 1 row of 6 blocks sewn together, but not as a 2 patch. Just 1 long row, single blocks. Okay. Back sides together. Nest the seam. There we go. Match the corner where we're going to start. Match my 1-inch mark for my seam allowance and stitch it out. cut. And we're going to pull out a pin. And there we go, another unit done. Okay, 2 more units like this. Two more 4-patch units. 1, 2. Which would mean I'd need 4 units, like what I'm doing right now, and that's what I'm going to piece. I'm going to make 4 of these. There's 1. Oops. I thought I was in my first stage. Look at that. Let me cut that. Okay, there we go. Boy, I'm glad I didn't sew it down like that. That would have been a mess. I would have had to rip that out. And you know, if you know me, you know I don't like ripping out stitches. Avoid it with like the plague. There we go. Okay, so that'd be 1 more. Need 1 more stack like this. 1, 2. Ooh, I miscounted. Oops. Okay. Boy, howdy, I miscounted somewhere, so let me stop right here. Let me think. So, that would give me 1 more. Could make a row out of this. Let me think. If, let's see here. I'm going to have to lay these out because I didn't count correctly. Imagine that. There we go. I'm laying out my blocks so I can get a better count because I messed up. I'm going to make it work. I may have to rip out something yet. Okay. So. Now, wait a minute here. I may not have to rip out. I might do I'm not going to have to rip out. I just think I just came up with a plan. 1, 2. Do I have 6? No. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, no, I do not have to rip out. Because what I'm going to do, I'll have 1 of these left over, and I'm going to make a throw pillow out of it. Okay? And my quilt will actually be 5 by 6, which is 30 blocks. Somehow I had my count off. Don't know how I did that, but you know what? Doesn't really surprise me because I'm a goober sometimes. So now all I need is 6 blocks sewn together in a long row. 1, 2. That's right. 3, 4, and then those 2 sewn together. That'll make 6 in a row. Perfect. And then I can sew my other pieces together. So we're moving right along. Boy, I'm glad I stopped where I stopped at, or I would have been ripping out stitches, everybody. So I thought I had like 45, so I've actually got, I think, 31. Don't know how I made a mistake in counting like that. Boy, howdy. That's a biggie. Ooh, doggies. So now I have 3 units like this, 3 of these of 2 sewn together, and I'm gonna make 1 long row out of this. Oops. If you see my mess over there, it is what it is, everybody. I'll clean it up and it'll look perfect, and I try to use my camera angles so nobody can see where I have stuff stacked. But sometimes, you know what? It just is what it is. I know at least one of you out there can relate to what I'm saying. Oh, I unthreaded my needle, so I'm just going to rethread that. I'm shocked. I thought I'd been out of thread by now, but I'm not. Because normally I'd like wind 3 bobbins for a project, any project, but I wasn't sure how many of these I had actually cut, to be perfectly honest. Okay. Go down there like that. And this one. As you can see, I'll have 1 row of 6. And that will give me 5 by 6 blocks. You'll make a nice little throw for a little bitty kid, or just something you could throw across a chair for a decorative purpose. Or in my case, I didn't want a great big one, because I'm going to travel. This is going to travel with me when I start teaching. Okay. So, 1 row of 6. My leftover here, I would not have had enough to have added this to my piece. This, I will make a backing fabric for this 2-piece. I will do this on camera, not today. Friday night, I will add this. I will try to add this to my repertoire. Actually, I'm just going to have this done. We'll do another video on other things you can make with this particular type of quilting. Okay, so there's that one. Now I need to sew. I am going to, how am I going to do this? Let me think here. I'm going to sew these together like this, and that will give me 3 units of 2 by 4 blocks. Okay, wrong sides together, backs together, however you want to say it. Going to put in a pin. Go. Match up the corner. And we're going to stitch it down. One-inch mark. Here. There we go. I didn't want to sew right over the top of my fringe because I want it to fluff out. Line up this other corner down here. And cut that thread. So now I have oops, come here you go. Right there. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add 2 more onto this, and that'll be my 6. Then I'll have 2 rows of 6 for my other piece, and that way I won't make another boo-boo. Oh, I can make some boo-boos, that's for sure. Alrighty. I'm hoping the fireworks this year in our little town are down by the river. Last year, because of COVID, it was out at the fairgrounds. County fair is here in our little town. It's not here yet, but it will be short. About the middle of July, we have our county fair. And that way people could spread out, and if you're downtown, you get kind of pretty bunched together and all that stuff. A lot of it we can see here from the house because we're only 3 blocks from the river and from downtown. But we usually just go downtown and enjoy it that way. Last year we did it from the subway parking lot. And it's all good. Excuse me. All right, so here I have 2 rows of 6. 2 rows of 6. And I got 1 more unit to make like that of 2 rows by 6. Just make sure of something here. Didn't take that pin. I knew I'd lost a pin somewhere. I just saw it. I hadn't taken a pin out of what I'd sewn before. There we go. So do it just like that. Okay. Oh, wait a minute now. Right there. And 1, 2, 3, right there. Yep, that's right. Putting in that pin. Oops. I pinned the wrong side because that put, yeah, that wouldn't have been, check this out. Look what I almost did, everybody. I almost put the same fabrics together. So we don't want to do that. And luckily, I had just started, so it was, I don't have to rip anything out. Thank goodness. Right? Right. Okay, let me look at this again. That's correct. And that's correct. Okay, there's my seam line right there. This is the one I want to sew together. Hold on. That and that, right? Right. There we go. Okay. Excuse me. Matching that seam. And then I'm just going to line up the corners. Just going to line up the corners. Come on, Richard, you can do this. There we go. Okay. There's that seam done. Woohoo. We're getting there, everybody. Woohoo. As you can see, the back is completely smooth. I know I've said it before, that as you get more and more pieces together, it just really becomes more evident of what that actually looks like. Let's see here, is that right? Right? Okay. Get that pin in there. And putting the pin in there just to hold that seam line in place. If you wanted to, you could put a pin at each end of that seam if it makes you feel more secure. Do it whatever way you want to. I don't. I personally don't. Because I always stop with my machine in the needle down position. And by doing that, it kind of gives me a third hand. So see, now the machine stopped and the needle was all the way down in the fabric. Now I can use both of my hands to straighten anything up, whatever I need to do. That actually serves as a third hand, basically. There we go. And we'll line up that other corner. Okay, we'll give that one a snippy. Pull out that pin. And now all I have left to do is sew my longer rows together. It just means I have two long seams, and that part will be done. Everybody, I'm going to take a quick break so that I can go get something for my throat, and I'll be right back in about 5 minutes or so. Intermission time. Okay, everybody, thank you for staying with me over that little short break there. And now we're going to sew our rows together. And first I'm going to sew my 2 big pieces on. I'm going to do that first. I'll just leave that up there for right a second. As you can see, I'm just going to make sure that my colors are offset so I get that checkerboard fashion look that I'm after here. And I'm going to pin all of these seams together so that I know in my head that it's going to turn out fine. Just it takes a little bit of time to do the pinning. I'm going to pin each seam together. I'm doing what's called nesting. I'm nesting the seams. Right there. Right here. Y'all, I am covered in little threads already. That's how this stuff frays. So when you put this in the washing machine, you make sure you'll have to clean out your washing machine because you'll have a billion little pieces of lint threads all over it. You just have to take a wet paper towel or something and wipe it out. It's all good. Or take it to a laundromat and use their machine. Many people do take these to laundromats because they're messy to wash. Just the first time is when they really make a mess. After the first laundering, yeah, then it's not so bad. And you do want to put this in a tumble dryer and set the heat on medium and let it dry out. Okay, that's all set. See how quick that was. Nice and easy. I'm going to line up my first corner here. Get it under the machine. I'm going to watch my 1-inch mark right here where I'm tapping my finger. And then I'm just going to sew that long seam together. Okay. Let me get up a little bit closer here. There you go. Okay. And by pinning those together, it just makes it super easy just to keep on going and slowly go over those seams. What I'm doing here, I'm trying to stitch in between the fringe as much as possible so I'm not stitching down all of the fringe. If you do, it won't matter, because trust me when I say this, it's going to do a lot of rattling. Now you can make these even if you don't have the cutting system that I used. You just cut your squares. So whatever size you want your squares to be, let's say you wanted a 6-inch square, you would cut an 8-inch square because 1 inch of it all the way around would be fringe. You sew them together and you cut the fringe after the seams are sewn together. But you just follow the same technique, same steps that I did with this. Plus side to doing it that way is that you can make the squares any size you want. Or the shapes. You could do triangles also using this method. Come on you. There you go. And we're almost got that one sewn. All right. I'm going to take out my pins as I go because I'll be using them again here. Should be 5. There's 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. Check that out. right there. I'll get you a big good view of it once I get this row sewn together, and then I only have one step left. After I do this step, there's only one step left, and I will have to wind another bobbin for that step. Okay, let's see, I'm gonna go this way, yes. And when you're doing setting blocks together, I like to have the big piece on the bottom and the smaller piece I'm attaching to the original piece on top. It's just easier to feed and keep things lined up. You know, I don't need, and I'm gonna pin the corners on this one, just because I can. I haven't done that yet. Is that right? That's right. This way. There we go. Then I'm going to match my seams. It's going to be the top. And then here. And here. And here. Think how many you'd have to do if you were doing, say, 10 rows of 10 or 11. Because finished, these squares, not counting fringe, but finished, the squares are actually 6.5 inches, okay? Because this cuts an 8.5 inch square, including the fringe pieces. So by using a 1 inch seam allowance, that means, I've got a long tail thread here, I'm going to snip that right there. That would mean with a 1 inch seam allowance, you'd end up with a 6.5 inch square. Okay, almost there, ready to stitch this one down. Let me grab me another pin. Okay. Line up that corner. Lining up the fringe edges with that 1 inch mark. Do a little bit better than that. Come on now, Richard. There we go. Here we go. Okay. Well, that works. Give it a start so I get my extra in. There. Now I can get it laid out here just right. We're just going to sew down that entire seam. Just stopping as each seam I go over, I can straighten everything up. Okay. And a little bit more. And down here. See, I really didn't need no pin at the outside corners. Cut cut that thread, guess what, everybody? All the blocks are sewn together. Okay. This is 5 by 6, so it's approximately 30 by 36 inches, basically. And I'm just going to open this up. There you can see the back of it. And then here's the front. See the front of it there. Okay, so what we're going to do next, if you look at the edges of this, check it out. See how you can open that up and you can stick your finger in there? This isn't done yet. Next, I'm going to do a stitch all the way around the outside perimeter, just like I was going to do a binding. But the stitch, I'm going to use a special stitch though. I'm going to use the triple straight stretch stitch. And that is that one, I think. Yep. So what it is on this machine, it's stitch 1-05, being in the under utility stitches in the first grouping, grouping number 1, stitch number 1-05. Okay. And let's see here. That is going to do it way over there. That'll actually work out well. Okay, so I'm going to start in a corner, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to line up my laser light to where my needle will drop for this. So that is set at the 0 position now. And I'm going to kick my shoes off. Oh, I forgot. I have to put in another bobbin because I know I don't want to run out of thread in the middle of a stitch. I'll save that bobbin for another project. So let's get a bobbin wound. Okay. And for any Baby Lock machine that you have, excuse me, whether it's the Destiny, Lissimo, the Altair or Meridian or the Solaris, this all works exactly the same as far as the steps. Ooh-wee. It looks like I've had a long-haired cat on me, and it has shedded all over my clothes. Sometime here soon, I'm going to make a sewing apron. I'll do that on camera. I'll announce it plenty ahead of time in case anybody wants to sew along with me. Okay, so there's my bobbin wound. I'm going to insert that. And the thread I'm using is Madeira Arrow quilting thread. Madeira quilting thread, Arrow Lock quilting thread, not lock. It is Arrow Quilt. Here. Boy, I can't even talk. There you go. It says Madeira Arrow Quilt. And this is a variegated, beautiful variegated thread. And I use this for piecing. I've used it for I've actually used it for, and I use it of course for quilting. It's designed for quilters. It's a 40 weight thread. But I've even used it in my embroidery machine. It does a beautiful job at embroidery also. It's a matte finish, so it's not going to be a glossy embroidery finish, but it's a very vintage look that you get when you use a thread like this to embroidery with. It is a polyester thread, which means less lint buildup and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to start at my corner, and I'm just going to go all the way around all the edges with my triple straight stretch stitch. Said that, haha. And we're just going to get started. Now, once again, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go 1 inch away. I'm going to still use that 1 inch mark, and that's how I'm going to space it. 1 inch. Okay. There we go. And we're off. And we're just going to gently guide the fabric, make sure the edges are hitting that 1 inch mark all the way around. Okay. You could just use, if you didn't want to take the time to do this, you could use just a regular straight stitch, but I think this looks really pretty once it's done. Yes, it does. Okay. And we're not going to break our thread at the corners. We're just going to turn a corner once we get there. And this is actually, technically, this is how you would do the binding, for lack of a better word, on a rag quilt. You really want to stitch those layers down all the way around the outside edge, using the same seam allowance that we've used throughout to join the blocks with, which is 1 inch. Okay. I'm just going to pivot it around. And as you can see, I will hold it up closer so you can see this once it's finished. But this is all there is to it. When I finish this, the only step I will have left is to launder and dry it, and my quilt is done. During the assembly process for a quilt like this, you've already got all the quilting done in it. So it makes it super easy and fast to make one of these. You can literally, depending on the size of the finished quilt, be an entire quilt done in a day, and that includes the quilting. All I'm doing, I'm watching that 1 inch mark on this machine right there to keep my seam nice and even all the way around the edges. We're almost halfway done with it, this step. And even by sewing right over the fringe and the wash, it'll all fray out nice and neat and look beautiful. It will be fabulous. After after this video, the next live stream is Friday night, Feature Friday, which is every Friday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. It needs to go a little bit more. Okay. There we go. And then I will be doing on Saturday live at 5 p.m. I'm doing the Quilts in Italy series. And then Sunday we will complete the bucket hat project. We started that last Sunday. And we're just going to have all kinds of fun. I have tons of projects planned. There we go. Quilt kits in my stash. We're going to be making a bunch of those. But the Quilts in Italy series, that's all about Cave Fassett. It's one of his books. And right now we are making the stone log cabin. And the next one that we're going to be making, I think it's the zigzag quilt. And some of those I probably won't even use his fabric in. Some I will, some I won't. But I may have to mix it up with some of the other fabric because some of those prints in that book are really hard to find. Of course, you know, the supply chain issue and fabric back orders and stuff, that is still a thing, even today. But as soon as I get my fabric together, we're going to do the next quilt in the Quilts in Italy series. While waiting for fabric to come in, we might do a different quilt talk after this next Saturday. We're almost done with our rag quilt. Yes, everybody, this is the last row. This is the last side that we have to stitch down. Of course, if I'd just been using a regular straight stitch, we would have been done it would have been done in half the time or 2/3 of the time, but I just like having a heavier stitch all the way around the outside edge, simply because it will hold up better when it comes time to launder it and in any future launderings. And it's definitely faster to do than a traditional binding on a quilt. So it's our last little piece right here. And guess what, everybody? I'm going to do my tie off button for that one. Cut it, and that quilt is done. Yeehaw! Okay, so here it is. I'm going to spread it out right here. It's a nice little throw. Make a wonderful lap quilt Let's see right here. There we go. On the back, except for the edges, it just looks like you've sewn, squares of fabric together. If you wanted to, you could add more quilting to it at this step, but I don't think personally. It really looks beautiful, and when it's laundered, it's even prettier. So I will do my best to have this ready for show and tell on Friday night in 2 days. So I think I can get this into the laundry tomorrow, and we'll have a good go at that. So thank you for everybody for watching my Rag Quilt series. We'll do another one in the future, but I'll come up with something else for Wednesdays. Some other project we can do. I don't know what it is yet, but it will be a good one, a fun one to watch. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate, let me get my face in there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please like and subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications so you'll be notified when I schedule the next live, or I have new videos up. I'm working on I'm editing videos as well. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you Friday night. Bye.